The laboratory buzzed with excitement as Elara, Quinn, and Jake prepared for their next big experiment. After their successful exploration of human anatomy and creativity, they wanted to take their research to a new level. Elara had a bold idea. What if they could combine Elysian and human DNA to create a hybrid organism? This hybrid could potentially possess the strengths of both species. Elara spent days studying the genetic data they had gathered about humans. She was fascinated by the possibilities. Jake, if we can create a hybrid, we could learn so much more about both Elysian and human biology, she said one evening, her voice filled with enthusiasm. Jake looked concerned. But is it safe? We don't know what could happen if we mix our DNA with theirs. I understand your worries, Elara replied, but think about the potential benefits. A hybrid could help us understand resilience, adaptability, and even emotional intelligence in new ways. After much discussion, Jake agreed to help Elara with the experiment. They began gathering the necessary materials and equipment they needed. Samples of both Elysian and human DNA. Thanks to their previous research, they already had access to some human genetic information. Now, they needed to prepare their lab for the next phase. They designed a containment chamber, a special area where they could safely conduct their experiments. Elara felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as they set up the chamber. This is it, Jake. We are about to make history, she said, her eyes shining with determination. Once everything was ready, Elara carefully combined the DNA samples. They worked late into the night, focused on creating the hybrid organism. As they mixed the samples, they monitored every detail, ensuring the process was as precise as possible. Finally, after hours of work, the moment arrived. They placed the mixture into a small incubator designed to support the growth of the hybrid. Elara and Jake watched anxiously as the incubator hummed softly. Now we wait, Jake said, trying to calm his nerves. Days passed, and Elara and Jake checked the incubator regularly. They documented every change, keeping detailed notes. Elara felt a mix of hope and anxiety. Would their experiment be successful? Would they create something amazing, or would it fail? On the 5th day, they noticed something unusual. The incubator began to glow faintly. Elara rushed over, her heart racing. Jake, look. Something is happening. Jake joined her, his eyes wide. With excitement. It's working. The hybrid is developing. They watched in awe as the glow intensified, and soon they could see movement inside the chamber. A small creature began to take shape. It had features of both Elysian and human traits, with a mix of smooth skin and soft fur. Elara could hardly believe her eyes. We did it, Jake. We created a hybrid. As the creature continued to develop, they carefully monitored its growth. It quickly became clear that it was not just a combination of the two species. The hybrid exhibited unexpected traits that neither Elysian nor human had. This is incredible, Jake said, taking notes. It seems to be more intelligent than we anticipated. Look how it responds to sound and light. Elara nodded, her mind racing. With possibilities. We need to see how it interacts with us. Let's introduce some stimuli and observe its behavior. They spent hours conducting experiments, gently interacting with the hybrid. It responded to their voices and movements, showing signs of curiosity. Elara felt a sense of connection with the creature. It was unlike anything she had ever seen. As the days went by, the hybrid grew stronger and more aware of its surroundings. Elara and Jake named it Nova, a name that reflected its new beginnings. They were fascinated by its ability to learn quickly, mimicking their actions and even displaying emotions. One day, while playing with Nova, Elara noticed something remarkable. Jake, look at this. Nova seems to understand our feelings. When I smile, it smiles back. Jake smiled, amazed. It's as if it can sense our emotions. This is groundbreaking. Elara felt a surge of pride. Nova could help us understand the emotional intelligence of both species. We need to share our findings with the Council. They prepared for another presentation, eager to showcase Nova and the research behind the hybrid. Elara believed that the Council would see the potential of their work and support further studies. On the day of the presentation, Elara stood before the Council again, her heart pounding with excitement. Jake was by her side, holding Nova gently. In his arms, the Council members looked curious but skeptical. Honorable members of the Council, Elara began, today we present our latest research. We have successfully created a hybrid organism, combining Elysian and human DNA. This creature, which we name Nova, possesses unique traits that could benefit both our species. As she spoke, she showcased videos of Nova interacting with them, demonstrating its intelligence and emotional responses. The Council members watched, their expressions shifting from skepticism to intrigue. One Council member, Lyra, leaned forward. This is extraordinary, Dr. Quinn. But what does this mean for our society? Elara smiled, ready for the question. The potential is vast. Nova can help us understand how emotional intelligence works across species. We could develop new ways to improve our communities, enhance our education, and even strengthen our bonds with each other. Kale, the stern Council member, raised an eyebrow. But what about the ethical implications? Are we playing with forces we do not fully understand? Elara took a deep breath. I understand your concerns. We must proceed carefully and responsibly. Our goal is to learn and improve life for all Elysians, not to create something dangerous. We will ensure that all our experiments are conducted with the highest ethical standards. After the presentation, the Council members discussed the implications of their work. Elara and Jake waited anxiously for their response. Finally, Lyra spoke. Again, I believe there is great potential here. We should support further research, but we must also establish guidelines to ensure ethical practices. Elara felt a wave of relief wash over her. Thank you, Council. We will do everything necessary to ensure the safety and well-being of our community. As the meeting concluded, Elara and Jake celebrated their success. They had gained the Council's support for their research, and they felt a sense of accomplishment. They were one step closer to understanding the mysteries of both humans and Elysia NS. In the following weeks. They continued their studies with Nova, exploring its abilities and traits. They conducted tests to observe how it learned and adapted to new challenges. Elara was amazed at how quickly Nova picked up new skills, often surprising them with its intelligence. However, as they delved deeper into their research, Elara began to feel a sense of unease. There were questions that lingered in her mind. What would happen if Nova began to develop its own identity? Would it want to be more than just a subject of study? Elara knew they had to tread carefully. As they moved forward, Elara and Jake remained committed to their research. With each discovery, they felt they were unlocking the potential of both species. They were determined to ensure that their work benefited everyone and respected the life they had created. Little did they know, the journey ahead would test their beliefs and challenge everything they thought they knew about life, identity, and the bond between species. As Elara, Quinn, and Jake continued their research with Nova, they felt a growing sense of excitement. The hybrid organism was thriving, learning, and showing signs of intelligence that amazed them both. However, beneath the excitement lay a tension that neither of them could ignore. They were venturing into unknown territory, and questions about Nova's future began to weigh heavily on Elara's mind. One evening, while they were observing Nova in the lab, Elara noticed something unusual. Nova was sitting quietly, staring at a holographic display of human art. Its expression was thoughtful, and it seemed captivated by the colors and shapes. Jake, look at Nova, Alara said softly. It seems to be lost in thought. Jake approached and watched closely. Maybe it's processing what it sees. It's been exposed to so much new information. As they observed, Nova turned its head and looked directly at them. There was a spark of understanding in its eyes. Alara felt a chill run down her spine. Could it be developing its own thoughts and feelings? Do you think Nova is starting to understand art and emotions? Alara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I think it might be, Jake replied, his brow furrowing in concern. But that raises a lot of questions. What does it mean for Nova to have thoughts and feelings? Are we ready for that? Alara nodded slowly, realizing the weight of their responsibilities. They had created a being that could potentially think and feel like them. It was a breakthrough, but it was also daunting. In the following days, Alara and Jake conducted more experiments trying to gauge Nova's emotional responses. They played music, showed it various forms of art, and even engaged it in simple conversations. Nova responded in ways that were surprising and often delightful. It laughed at jokes and seemed to enjoy the music, moving its body in rhythm. One day, as they sat in the lab, Nova approached Alara. It reached out with its small hand, touching her gently. Ilara's heart raced. This was a significant moment. Nova was not just a subject. It was forming a bond with her. Jake, I think Nova is trying to connect with us, Alara said, her voice filled with wonder. Jake watched closely. This is incredible, but we need to be careful. We have to consider what this means for. Alara Quinn sat in her lab, surrounded by holographic displays of human anatomy. After her successful presentation to the Elysian Science Council, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She and Jake were eager to continue their research, hoping to uncover even more secrets about humans. One day, while examining a new batch of human data, Alara noticed something unusual. Jake, come here. You need to see this. She called, her voice filled with excitement. Jake hurried over, curious about what Alara had found. What is it? He asked. Alara pointed to a holographic image of the human brain. Look at these areas here, she said, highlighting specific regions. These parts are linked to creativity and problem solving. It seems humans have a strong ability to think outside the box. Jake leaned closer, intrigued. That's fascinating. How does that relate to our studies? Alara thought for a moment. If we understand how their brains work, we might find ways to enhance our own cognitive abilities. We could develop new methods to teach and learn. They began to dive deeper into the human brain's structure and function. They studied how different regions controlled various functions, from basic survival instincts to complex emotions. Alara was particularly interested in the areas responsible for creativity and abstract thinking. As they researched, Alara and Jake decided to conduct an experiment. They wanted to simulate human brain activity using their technology. They set up a series of holographic models to replicate how the human brain responded to different stimuli. Let's see how the brain reacts to art and music, Alara suggested. Humans often express themselves through these forms. They programmed the simulation with images of famous paintings and recordings of music. As they watched the brain activity unfold on the screen, Alara noticed something remarkable. Look at this, she exclaimed. When exposed to art and music, the brain lights up in ways we didn't expect. There's a surge of activity in the emotional centers. Jake's eyes widened. That means art and music are not just entertainment for humans. They play a critical role in their emotional health. Alara nodded, feeling inspired. We need to explore this further. If we can understand the impact of creativity on our emotions, we could improve well-being in our society. They decided to conduct a series of tests, asking Elysian volunteers to engage in creative activities. They wanted to measure the effects on their emotional states and overall health. Alara was excited about the potential findings. as they gathered. Volunteers, Alara created an environment filled with art supplies, music, and other creative tools. The volunteers painted, played instruments, and expressed themselves in various ways. Alara and Jake observed closely, taking notes on their reactions. At first, some Elysians were hesitant. They were not used to expressing themselves in such open ways, but as they engaged with the activities, smiles began to appear. Laughter filled the air, and the atmosphere changed. "Look at them," Jake said, smiling. "They're starting to enjoy themselves." Alara watched as one volunteer painted a vibrant scene of Elysian landscapes. "This is incredible. We are witnessing the power of creativity firsthand." After the activities, Alara and Jake interviewed the volunteers. They asked how they felt before and after the creative sessions. The responses were eye-opening. "I felt stressed before, but now I feel light and happy," one volunteer said. Another added, "Creating art helped me express feelings I didn't know I had." Alara felt a surge of excitement. "This is exactly what we needed." Humans found joy and relief through creativity, and now we see the same in our community. As they compiled the results, Alara realized they were on the verge of a major breakthrough. The connection between creativity and emotional well-being was becoming clearer. She wanted to share this with the Science Council and demonstrate the importance of their findings. The next few weeks were filled with hard work. Alara and Jake analyzed the data, preparing for another presentation. They wanted to highlight the benefits of creativity for Elysian society. They believed that fostering art and music could lead to a healthier, happier community. Finally, the day came for Alara to present again. As she stood in front of the council, she felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She began by reviewing their previous findings about human anatomy and emotions, then smoothly transitioned into their latest research on creativity. "Honorable members of the council," Alara began, her voice steady. "Today, I will discuss how creativity impacts emotional health, both in humans and in our own species." She shared the results of their experiments, showing how engaging in creative activities improved the emotional states of the Elysian volunteers. She explained the connection between creativity, emotional well-being, and overall health. As she spoke, Alara could see some council members leaning forward, intrigued. She continued, "If we embrace creativity in our society, we could enhance our emotional health and strengthen our community bonds." After her presentation, a council member named Kale raised his hand. "Dr. Quinn, while your findings are interesting, how do we implement this idea? How can we encourage creativity in our people?" Alara smiled, ready for this question. "We can start by organizing community events focused on art and music. We can create spaces where Elysians feel comfortable expressing themselves. By promoting creative activities, we can foster emotional connections." Another council member, Lyra, spoke up. "This could change how we educate our young ones. If creativity is linked to emotional health, we should incorporate it into our schools." Alara felt a surge of hope. Exactly. By encouraging creativity, we can help our children develop emotionally and intellectually. The council members began to discuss the possibilities. Alara watched as they exchanged ideas, feeling a sense of accomplishment. She knew they were making progress. After the meeting, Alara and Jake celebrated their success. "I can't believe how well it went," Jake said, grinning from ear to ear. Alara laughed. "It feels like we're finally being heard. This research could really change our society." As they continued their work, Alara felt a growing sense of responsibility. She wanted to ensure that their findings were put into action. They began to plan community workshops and creative events, eager to share their discoveries with everyone. In the following months, Alara and Jake worked tirelessly to promote creativity throughout the Elysian community. They organized art classes, music sessions, and creative writing groups. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Elysians began to embrace their artistic sides, and the sense of connection within the community grew stronger. Alara watched as her dream was becoming a reality. She felt proud of what they had accomplished together. The study of human anatomy was not just about understanding a different species. It was about improving their own lives and well-being. But as Alara looked ahead, she wondered what other surprises lay in store. She knew their journey was far from over, and that new discoveries awaited them. Little did they know that the true impact of their research was yet to unfold, and it would lead them down a path they never expected. Alara Quinn and Jake were filled with excitement as they prepared for their next big experiment. After their groundbreaking discoveries about human anatomy and emotions, they wanted to take their research further. Alara had an idea that seemed bold but full of potential. They would attempt to combine Elysian and human DNA to create a hybrid organism. Alara spent days gathering data and studying human genetics. She was fascinated by the possibilities this experiment could bring. Jake, if we can create a hybrid, we could unlock new ways to understand both species, she said eagerly. Jake looked concerned. But is it safe? We don't know what could happen if we mix our DNA with theirs. Alara nodded, understanding his worries. I know, but think of the benefits. A hybrid could help us understand resilience, adaptability, and even emotional intelligence. After discussing the risks and rewards, Jake agreed to help Alara with the experiment. They began gathering the necessary materials and equipment. They needed samples of both Elysian and human DNA. Thanks to their earlier research, they had access to some human genetic information. Now they had to prepare their lab for this new venture. They designed a special containment chamber, a safe area where they could conduct their experiments. Alara felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as they set up the chamber. This is it, Jake. We are about to make history, she said, her eyes sparkling with determination. Once everything was ready, Alara carefully combined the DNA samples. They worked late into the night, focusing on creating the hybrid. As they mixed the samples, they monitored every detail, ensuring the process was precise. Finally, after hours of work, the moment of truth arrived. They placed the mixture into a small incubator, designed to support the growth of the hybrid. Alara and Jake watched anxiously as the incubator hummed softly. Now we wait, Jake said, trying to calm his nerves. Days passed, and Alara and Jake checked the incubator regularly. They documented every change, keeping detailed notes. Alara felt a mix of hope and anxiety. Would their experiment succeed? Would they create something amazing? Or would it fail? On the 5th day, they noticed something unusual. The incubator began to glow faintly. Alara rushed over, her heart racing. Jake, look, something is happening. Jake joined her, eyes wide with excitement. It's working. The hybrid is developing. They stood in awe as the glow intensified. On the planet Elysia, where tall blue trees swayed under a purple sky, Dr. Alara Quinn looked out from her laboratory window. She was a xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life. Alara was not like most of her friends. While they were content with their research on native species, Alara always wanted to know more about other worlds. One day, while exploring an ancient cave on Elysia, Alara found something amazing. She stumbled upon old texts written by a long-lost civilization. These texts spoke of a planet called Earth and a species called humans. Intrigued, Alara took the texts back to her lab. She could hardly believe what she read. Humans had once lived on Earth, and they were said to be intelligent and resourceful. Alara rushed to her assistant, Jake. He was a young Elysian with bright green eyes and messy hair. Jake, you have to see this, she called, waving the texts in the air. Jake looked up from his workbench, where he was examining a glowing plant. "What is it, Elara?" he asked, walking over. "These texts. They talk about humans and their bodies. We need to study them," Elara said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "But why study a species that no longer exists?" Jake questioned, crossing his arms. "We have so much to learn from Elysian creatures," Elara sighed. "I know, but think about it. Humans might have traits we don't understand. They could help, improve our own biology. What if we could learn something important?" Jake hesitated, but he could see the passion in Elara's eyes. "Okay, I'm in. Let's see what we can find." For the next few weeks, Elara and Jake dived into their research. They gathered information from the texts and searched through the archives of Elysia. They found images of humans, their bones, and even some materials left behind from their civilization. The more they learned, the more fascinated Elara became. One evening, while studying a diagram of the human heart, Elara paused. "Look at this, Jake. Their heart is so different from ours. It has 4 chambers, just like ours, but it works in a unique way." Jake leaned closer, squinting at the holographic display. "That's interesting, but how does that help us?" Elara thought for a moment. "If we understand how their heart works, we might be able to improve our own health. Maybe we can create better medicines or find ways to heal injuries more effectively." Days turned into weeks as they continued their work. Elara spent hours in the lab, often forgetting to eat or sleep. She was driven by a desire to unlock the secrets of human anatomy. Jake, while supportive, started to worry about her. He noticed she was becoming obsessed. One day, while Elara was analyzing a sample of human DNA, Jake walked in with a concerned look. "Elara, you need to take a break. You've been at this for too long." "I can't, Jake. We're so close to understanding them." "I can feel it," Elara replied, her voice filled with urgency. "But what if you're missing something important?" "What? If you're too focused on the humans and ignoring our own species?" Jake asked gently. Elara paused. She knew Jake cared for her, but she couldn't help herself. The mystery of humans was calling to her. "I appreciate your concern, but I have to see this through. There's too much potential here." As days passed, a lab filled with holographic images of human anatomy. Elara and Jake worked long hours, studying everything they could find. They compared human organs to their own, noting the similarities and differences. Elara was amazed at how complex humans were, yet how much they resembled Elysian life in some ways. One night, while they were deep in their research, Jake noticed something strange. "Elara, look at this. The human brain has areas that control emotions in a way we don't fully understand." Elara's eyes widened. That could explain their creativity and problem-solving skills. If we could learn from their emotional responses, we might enhance our own understanding of feelings. Or we could create a society that is more in touch with emotions, Jake suggested. His curiosity piqued. Elara smiled, excited by the idea. "Exactly. We could help our people connect better with each other." Just when they thought they were making progress, Elara faced resistance from her peers. During a meeting of the Elysian Science Council, she presented her findings, only to be met with skepticism. "Dr. Quinn, why should we care about an extinct species?" asked a council member named Lyra. "We have our own species to study." Elara stood tall, trying to keep her voice steady. "But humans left behind knowledge that could benefit us. Their understanding of biology and medicine could help us improve our own lives." Another council member, an older Elysian named Rian, shook his head. "You are wasting your time, Elara. There are more pressing matters we need to focus on." Feeling frustrated, Elara defended her work. "What if we miss an opportunity to learn from them? Ignoring this could be a mistake." After the meeting, Elara felt defeated. She returned to the lab, her mind racing. Jake noticed her mood and tried to cheer her up. Don't let them get to you. Your research is important. I just wish they could see what I see, Elara replied, staring at the holograms of humans around. There's so much potential here. That night, as she worked late into the hours, Elara realized that she had to prove herself. She needed to show everyone that studying humans was not just a dream but a path to progress. With renewed determination, she began planning her next steps, eager to uncover the mysteries of human anatomy and what it could mean for Elysian society. As Elara continued her research, she felt a spark of hope. What she found in the studies would change everything. Little did she know, the journey ahead would challenge her beliefs and lead to discoveries beyond her imagination. Elara Quinn sat at her lab desk, surrounded by glowing screens filled with images and data about humans. The room buzzed with the soft hum of machines. She had spent weeks gathering information, and now it was time to dive deeper into her research. Elara felt excited and determined. Jake arrived, carrying a stack of old human artifacts they had found in the archives. Look what I found, Jake said, placing the artifacts on the table. There were tools, broken pottery, and even a small book. With faded writing, Elara's eyes lit up. These could help us understand how humans lived. Let's examine them closely. They began by looking at the small book. It had pictures and descriptions of human anatomy. Elara turned the pages carefully, her heart racing as she read about muscles, bones, and organs. Did you know humans have a unique way of moving? Elara said, pointing to a diagram of the human skeleton. Their bones allow them to walk upright and run fast. Jake nodded. That's interesting. But how does that help us? Elara thought for a moment. If we understand their movement, we can improve our own athletic abilities. Imagine if we could run like they did. As they continued their research, Elara and Jake focused on the human heart. They studied its structure and function, comparing it to the Elysian heart. Elara pointed out the differences. Humans' hearts pump blood in a different way than ours. This might explain their endurance. Jake scribbled notes, fascinated by the information. What do you think we should do with this knowledge? Elara smiled. We should try to create simulations. If we can replicate their heart function in a controlled environment, we might learn even more. That afternoon, they set up a series of holographic simulations in the lab. Elara designed a model of the human heart, and together they watched as it beat on the screen. The rhythm was steady, and they could see how blood flowed through the chambers. This is incredible, Jake said, impressed. We can see how it works in real time. Elara nodded. Let's test different scenarios. What happens when we increase the heart rate? Or when we simulate stress? They spent hours running simulations, adjusting variables and watching the results. Elara felt a rush of excitement every time they made a new discovery. It was as if they were uncovering secrets that had been hidden for centuries. As they worked, Elara noticed something unusual in the data. Jake, look at this. When we increase the heart rate, the efficiency of blood flow changes significantly. Humans adapt quickly to stress. That's amazing. Jake exclaimed. Maybe we can use this knowledge to help Elysian athletes train better. Elara's mind raced with possibilities. If we can teach our athletes to handle stress like humans do, we could improve our performance in sports and other activities. Days turned into weeks, and their research continued to grow. They studied human muscles, lungs, and even the brain. Elara became more and more fascinated by the emotional side of humans. She found studies about how emotions affected their health and well-being. Jake, did you know that humans' emotions can influence their physical state? Elara said one day, showing him a chart. When they are happy, their bodies react positively. but stress and sadness can lead to health problems. That's interesting, Jake replied. We should look into how our emotions affect us too. Alara agreed. Yes, we can create a project to study Elysian emotions and see if there are similarities. With renewed energy, they began to explore the emotional aspects of both species. They conducted surveys within their Elysian community, asking about feelings and how they dealt with them. They wanted to compare their findings with what they learned about humans. As they gathered data, Alara noticed a pattern. Many Elysians expressed the importance of community and connection. It seems like our emotions are tied to our relationships, she said. Humans have similar experiences. Jake nodded thoughtfully. Maybe we can improve our own emotional health by learning